Who do I pick in the mid lane next patch with all these 11-17 changes? What's up, GameLeap? Oh, Coach Cheers back at it, and in today's video, we will be revealing the 12 best mid laners for 11-17. And we have heard your calls for timestamps, so on these patch countdown videos, if you want the stamps to continue, let us know you rate them by smashing that like button down below. And yeah, let's get into it. So starting off the countdown, coming in at number 12 is a champion you should pick to counter every mage in the game. Kassadin. Now, unfortunately, next patch Fleet Footwork is getting nerfed, so you're going to be healing flesh during the laning phase, so it's going to be a little tougher to survive early on. And with Yomo's Ghostblade getting buffed, you're going to see more AD assassins in the mid lane, and because these counter Kassadin, it might be a little harder, but once you get to your mythic spike in level 11, then level 16, you are going to cause carnage. Now, the tip to play Kassadin in the mid lane as you copy down all the runes and builds is that if you want to dominate those AP matchups even harder, timing your Q to block the enemy champion's damage is huge, and not just on your opponent, but on minions you are last hitting as well. So when the enemy mid laner moves towards you to damage you, throw your Q out to get that shield. Next up, coming in at number 11, we have a much stronger laning phase mage, and this is Anivia. Now, she might not have the mobility of Kassadin, but from level 1 to 11, she is much stronger. Ever since Riot buffed your attack windup and missile speed in 1025, and the frostbite double damage that procs off your Q just clipping an enemy champion, the Cryo Phoenix has not budged from the top 10 mid laners since, in terms of win rate that is. Also, the fact your ultimate's cooldown is 3 seconds at level 11 and 2 seconds at level 16 is nuts, and you will have this up almost permanently in fights because the ability haste you will also have from Leandra's Anguish. Now, the tip to be as good as Froggen on Anivia using your wall offensively is key. So when you throw your Flash Frost in the enemy's direction, you can use your W to push that target into your Q. This is especially potent at level 6, of course, because you can throw your ultimate in there as well. But don't just think because you're playing Anivia, you have to use your W for a bit of peel and that's it. She can be very oppressive in lane, and this is one way you can beat just that. Now, following Anivia, we have the newest champion on the Rift, and this is Akshan, coming in at number 10, who is receiving a lot of changes next patch. Now, for mid lane, what we really have to consider is the E nerf in the early game, so maybe maxing Q first is the new way to go, but once you get to the mid game and definitely late game, you will be dealing a ridiculous amount of damage now that it's scaling off more bonus AD. And the other change we really have to focus on is the Wits End nerf, because this was your first item against magic damage mids. This hurts your on hit in the mid game and therefore your damage, but Akshan will still be strong. Now, the tip to help you Tarzan your way to freelo is to trade with your passive shield up. Not having your shield ready for your fights probably means you're going to lose them, and this will help you have a much better laning phase, coordinating those trades with your passive. Now, if you're not a fan of edgelords and would rather play a Yordle riding a plane that would definitely crash, then Corki is the champ for you, and it might sound weird, but the Corkster is actually strong. It's true, you're not going to stomp lane as much as other champions, but Corki's scaling could be unmatched. It's that insane. What's also great is the Fleet Footwork nerf that is actually a buff for Corki. The high base damage means you will have more sustain in the laning phase, so you get to those mid and late game spikes with a bit more regularity. Now, the tip for Corki is going to help you die a lot less in the early game. When you get jumped on and you can't react quick enough, sometimes it's actually better to let the CC hit you so you can then Valkyrie away. Now, this sounds weird, but this is because your W is very easy to interrupt. So a Trundle Pillar, a Zac Bounce, a Nautilus Hook, so actually waiting for that cooldown to be used before you Valk is critical. If your W gets interrupted, you will die 100%. Now, speaking of dying, beating Corki to the number 8 spot is Yasuo, and we all know how annoying it is to play against the Master of the Wind. With the buffs to your passive and AD this season, Yasuo has never not been good, and at the moment with Immortal Shield Bow as your mythic and revitalizing your runes, the shield you get is like half your HP bar, so you have all the DPS in the world and all the survivability as well. Now, the tip for all you Yasuo wannabes, if you're in range of the enemy champion, a very simple auto Q combo is very effective. Way too many Yasuo players will just Q, and that's it. As a result, you miss out on important damage and a conquer stack, and of course it's not the end of the world, but the best Yasuos in the world do this on repeat. Now, if you like playing AD champions in the mid lane, but you love assassins, then Talon is one you have to pick up in 11-17. The reason for this is because Yomu's Ghostblade is getting a huge buff. Okay, so you're losing 5 AD, but it's costing 100 less gold, and it's giving you 15 ability haste now. For AD assassins, haste is a very important stat, and the movement speed you get from the item is amazing for Talon. This allows you to get around the map quicker to assassinate enemies and just snowball a lot harder. Now, I know what you're thinking, Serpent's Fang is getting nerfed. Yes, you're losing lethality, but you're doing the same damage to champions who are shielded, so if you're against champions with Steroids Gauge, Shield Bow, Locked in the Iron Solari, it's still going to be that counter item. Now, before you pick Talon, one mechanic that is essential to master is using Flash with your W. So you can W Flash to execute a low health target, and you can also Flash before your rake comes back to you so the second part of it lands. Follow both these combos off with a Q auto attack and it's over. But what about if you don't like AD assassins? reasons you prefer the AP version. Well, how about LeBlanc, who is banned in 60% of games in Korean high elo? She's that busted. Now, why is that? Well, in the right hand, she is impossible to kill and can one-shot anyone if they don't have 400 magic resist. The lack of counterplay makes her perfect for solo queue, but there are a couple of champions that ruin her day. Kassadin is one and Lissandra the other, and the latter is also getting buffed, so you will have to be a little careful blind picking her. But once you are on the Rift, make sure to trade as much as possible, because you will be taking Electrocute, Corrupting Potion, a Taste of Blood. You don't want to just be sitting there in the early laning phase AFK. You are all about short trading before your Luden's Tempest and Sorcerer shoot spikes. Now, if Kassadin isn't good enough, another AP counter in the mid lane is Sylas. The overall buffs this season to your passive Q and W have made the Chain Whipper a very popular force in the mid lane. Your power spike with Everfrost and Lucidity Boots is very powerful, and because Conqueror is so easy to stack and outright broken, you're almost impossible to duel. Not to mention the fact that in any game you pick Sylas, there is going to be one ultimate on the enemy team you can just steal that just auto wins games, like Malphite's are, for example. Now, to really look like a Sylas smurf, it's all about your passive and auto attacking during trades. You never want 5 passive stacks sitting there after an all-in, because that's damage. So once you have gap close to your opponent, weave in auto attacks. Auto attack when you land your chains or Everfrost root them. DPS is everything. Now, speaking of DPS, coming in at number 4, we have one of the most played mid laners and champions in the game, Katarina. With no legit nerfs this season, Kat has been a permanent fixture on our mid lane countdowns, and who can disagree? Her level 1 might be the weakest in the game, but even if you miss all 6 minions, just get to level 2 full HP, and that's it. Job done. From that point, it's just about headbutting your keyboard. And when you do this really well, you get your Nash's tooth earlier, and when all this attack speed and on-hit gets pumped into your kit, it's all but GG. But your headbutting has to be well timed, so trying to bait your opponent into using their abilities before you, this is a great way to trade. You can dodge whatever comes your way with your Shumpo, auto attack immediately, and then you're sweet. Headbutt away. Now, you could headbutt on the 3rd place champion on this mid lane countdown, but there has to be a bit more thought. So if you want to play the 2nd best AD assassin on the 11-17 Rift, play Qiyana. And by the way, if you want to master any of these champions, because all of them are very mechanical, then be sure to head on over to the GameLeap website for the most in-depth challenger tier courses and guides on the web. Links are in the description and comment section. Do not get left behind. And for Qiyana, with the new Ghost Blade, you are going to have an absolute field day. Even though your W's movement speed got nerfed, you will easily have enough mobility to glide across the Rift, one-shotting anyone you make contact with. Again, with Serpent's Fang taking a little hit, make sure to build this specifically for teams with a ton of shields, especially the enemy backline. Now, in terms of playing Qiyana during the laning phase when you do not want to one-shot or set up a gank for your jungler, your trading is going to be maximized when you use your Brush Q. This makes you invisible and stops the enemy champion from retaliating. Think of it like an Akali Shroud. The more you use this, the more you will hard win. Now, the 2nd best mid laner next patch is another AD champion, and even though she is getting nerfed in 11-17, who is going to stop Irelia from misplaying and still 1v9ing? So you're healing less from your Q, but seriously, that's it. Your W reducing both physical and magic damage now is huge. Your Q being on a lower cooldown each time you level up your ultimate, that's huge. Your passive only needing 4 stacks, that's just as huge. There is just way too much power still. The Wit's End nerf might set you back a tiny bit during the mid game, but again, it's so pinned that it won't matter. Just remember that your passive is everything. Especially early on, this is what makes you so hard to play against. So stacking this by last hitting minions with your Q is crucial, and once you have 3 stacks, try to look to Q to a minion to last hit it, and then Blaze Surge onto the enemy champion. It's very hard to react to, and because you will have your passive stacked, it can only end well. Now for the unveiling of the best mid laner in the entire game for 11-17. So this champion is getting nerfed next patch. Your ultimate's cooldown will be longer at later ranks, your E is dealing less damage, but for Zed, your Q is getting buffed, Ghostblade is getting buffed, and in the late game you will have so much ability haste anyway that the Deathmark nerf will mean very little. A level 6 Zed with a Serrated Dirk is still the scariest early game side on the Rift, and because everything is just so killable these days with all the damage, the Shadow Master comes in at number 1. And if you are playing Zed, please throw your W Shadow to the side of the enemy champion. This makes it 10 times easier to land both shurikens. Do not throw it on top of their head. So those are the 12 best mid laners for 11-17. So you don't miss any of our future daily uploads, smash that subscribe button, and until tomorrow's episode, this has been the Cheers.